Hello and welcome to our second episode of Eyes on Germany, a video testimonial series on Germany's Council presidency. The presidency started on the 1st of July and lasts until the end of 2020. My name is Jeanette Süß. I'm European Affairs Manager at the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. That's a liberal and pro-European political foundation based here in Brussels. With Eyes on Germany, we want to shed light on how other local, national or European actors see Germany's presidency and what their expectations are. One particular feature of Germany is its federalist structure. This is why I'm very happy to have Tom Odebrecht here with us today, as Tom is the head of the EU Liaison office of the so-called Landtag, the State Assembly of North-Rhine Westphalia. Remember, that's the land where Carnival is taking place. Well, normally that remains to be seen, as with the current corona pandemic, it will most likely be cancelled. What is not cancelled, however, is Germany's council presidency and EU policymaking in general. So, Tom, you're part of this complex political process, so tell us about your job. How does coordination between the national, local and European level look like in practice?
Well, I'm working for the administration of the Landtag of North-Rhine-Westphalia, the State Assembly of North-Rhine-Westphalia, Europe's biggest region. It would be the sixth biggest economy if it was an autonomous state, a sovereign state. As a liaison office, I gather information here in Brussels on policy issues, on institutional issues. I analyze this information and I put them into briefings and report back to my parliament, to the president of my parliament, to the administration, and most importantly to the members of my parliament. Secondly, I bring back the positions, the policy stances we have as a state legislator to Brussels and try to generate support for our policy positions and institutional positions vis-à-vis the European Union. For me, in practice, under the German Council presidency, not much has changed because even though we have maybe better contacts with under the German presidency with very specific and special issues dealing with COVID and the MFF, the multi-annual financial framework and the recovery instrument, the day-to-day work is still the same of using your channels to get information how, for example, the MFF will affect the regions in Europe.
So you already pointed out some very important policy fields for you on North-Rhine-Westphalian Landtag, but to what extent do the priorities of North-Rhine-Westphalia differ from or complement the priorities of Germany's presidency?
Indeed, we have European policy priorities as well as a region laid out by the state government and then being debated, which just happened lately in my state parliament. They are very much in line with what the German Council presidency has presented as their priorities. First and foremost, a coordinated response to COVID, recovery under and post-COVID. The MFF is probably the most important single issue right now in Brussels. But we look at especially internal affairs issues, maybe even migration, police coordination, judiciary, these kind of issues. And I think because these are long-term issues, there's definitely a focus on these kind of issues as a region or from a region.
Mm-hmm. You already mentioned the handling of COVID-19 pandemic. North Rhine-Westphalia was severely hit by the crisis, and the crisis, in general, affects policymaking and also the coordination of Germany's council presidency. So what do you expect from Germany in terms of crisis management?
I think what we as a region and as a state assembly expect is what we also expect from the European level in general, from the Commission, which is coordination of measures, coordination of potential travel restrictions, of responses to the crisis in the medical sector, sanitary issues, etc. We, as a state assembly, also have what you would call delegations in the European Parliament, delegations that deal with contact between, on a parliamentary level, between North Rhine-Westphalia and other states or regions. So I'm working a lot with local MPs that have a focus on cross-border North Rhine-Westphalian Dutch or Flemish, Belgian cooperation, and especially under the first or within the first couple of weeks and months of the pandemic, we have also on a parliamentary level managed to coordinate our efforts to respond to the COVID threat. And this is definitely something that also the European level could look at as we do it pretty well on a regional level, I would say.
So you would even say that the federalist structure that Germany has is kind of an asset and helped Germany to rather cope well with the crisis in comparison to other countries?
I don't want to judge the responses of every single member state, but I would say that in times of COVID, the German federal system has definitely shown that there are some clear advantages to have a regional approach to these kind of issues. In practice, it has shown that, or it's been shown that you can respond regionally, or you should respond regionally rather than nationally or even on a European-wide scale, because the situations are very different and they change rapidly, and then you need to respond. So there's a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge we can build our response on.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the main policy issues that are on the table at the moment. One of the key initiatives of the EU is the European Green Deal. In her State of the Union, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen just reiterated Europe's climate ambitions, which means that climate neutrality should be reached by 2050 and carbon emissions should be cut by 55%. What are then the challenges, in your opinion, your state is facing in terms of changing energy demands in the coming years?
The economic structure of North Rhine-Westphalia has changed a lot already and is changing. What we as a region obviously would like to see is enabling this structural change through requirements from the European level, all within the framework of the Green Deal. So what I think we in North Rhine-Westphalia have shown is that drastic structural change is possible, always in coordination with the European level.
Another important question when it comes to structural changes is money. I mean, how to finance all these transformation processes. We are in the final negotiation round of the multi-annual financial framework and the NextGeneration EU plan. To what extent are regional interests taken into account in the next steps to follow?
The Committee of Regions utters its opinion, but formally we have no say. In practice, obviously, it's different. As a region as diverse as North Rhine-Westphalia, with rural and urban areas, with former industrial areas, with big cities and small cities, is pretty much affected on every level of the MFF outcome and the NextGeneration EU outcome. Obviously, being a very diverse region, we would not like to see structural funds being cut because they are allocated to other priorities. The Just Transition Fund, the JTF, is a new instrument which addresses this issue, I think rightly so in general. It's a fund that is providing EU money for regions that are particularly affected by these structural changes, by decarbonizing its economy. And now what we as a region need to make sure that this is actually additional money and not something that is counted into different funds or then being subtracted from other funds.
Another focus of the NextGeneration EU program is digitalisation. So there's this big plan of 750 billion euro, and the aim is to foster digitalisation. So how should a forward-looking digital policy of North Rhine-Westphalia look like in your opinion?
In general, North Rhine-Westphalia has been pretty strong in this field. To name an example, the state level has provided funding for European Blockchain Institute, which is looking for digital solutions for the logistics sector. Second, the Max Planck Institute for Cybersecurity and Privacy has been founded in North Rhine-Westphalia in 2019, also by funding from the state level. And third, there's a strong cluster, there's a strong focus on artificial intelligence that relates directly to the European level, because also the European level is looking at the ethical aspects of how to use artificial intelligence, and North Rhine-Westphalia is also looking into the aspect of certification of certain artificial intelligence applications.
Let's now move on to our last topic, which is also future-oriented. That is the Conference on the Future of Europe. That is still supposed to be launched this year. Well, we're all waiting for the interinstitutional agreement on that. And within this conference, the more longer-term goals of the European Union will be discussed. So how do state parliaments like the North Rhine-Westphalian Landtag ensure that their interests are taken into account? And what are the results that you're hoping for?
The Conference on the Future of Europe is definitely a central, is of great interest to us. Obviously, as the State Assembly of Europe's biggest region, we would also like to have a seat at the table, potentially be part of the composition of the conference, which, in all honesty, will be very difficult to achieve. But the European Parliament has already agreed on allocating 4 seats to the Committee of the Regions. Obviously, there are also North Rhine-Westphalian members of the Committee of the Regions, and the Committee of the Regions has already said that it wants the number of seats to be raised to 8. As a state assembly, we're pretty close to our citizens, this by definition. A lot of MPs are also locally involved in local politics and local policy making, so they know exactly how the different municipalities work, what the needs are, what the issues are. So I think we should, at the European level, should really rely on the expertise of the regions and especially of the regional parliaments to carry out and to make this conference a success. Secondly, we will also be happy to support the process by obviously providing logistics or hosting events, etc., because they need to take place somewhere, and we know, I think, pretty well what we're doing when we do our outreach and we discuss, we initiate debates with citizens, we invite a lot of students and pupils to our buildings. We have youth debates in the parliament. So this is what we're good at. This is what we've been doing for a long time. The European level, I think, should focus on what we can provide, what we can bring to the table. In terms of the outcome, I think this needs to be an open process. The conference will have to be something that comes up with real effective solutions. Here in Brussels, we're talking about should there be treaty changes, etc. I think everyone agrees that at some point treaty changes are necessary. But the Treaty of Lisbon is still a pretty strong document, and I think has not been used to its full potential yet. So let's see what the outcome is. But again, I think the regions can play and will play a very strong role in the entire process.
So as you can see, there are a lot of policy issues right now at the table on the political agenda, and the challenges Europe is facing are multifaceted. I think what comes out of our talk is that coordination between the different levels, between local, national and European level, is key. So thank you, Tom, for having given us a thorough overview of how North-Rhine-Westphalian Landtag and your Liaison office are involved in this complex policy process.